For this piece, I am using the Legion Stonehenge black watercolor paper and the color Sweetheart. So I'm going to start with my helix maker and I'm going to draw a circle on the upper left hand corner. Using my Copic opaque white, I am going to wet my brush a little and start painting on the right side of the moon. So I'm flipping my paper over so that I'll have an easier access. And I'm going to start with a fully saturated brush filled with white, and I am completely outlining the right side of the moon. As I begin to move towards the center, I am going to water down my brush to allow the white to move freely. This will also desaturate the white and make it lighter as we move towards the inside and the left side of the moon. I'm adding just a little bit more white to brighten that area up. And after that, I'm just going to go in with plain water and drag some of that paint out to the other side of the moon. Once I have completely saturated the moon with water, I'm going to go back into the left side and add a bit more white to brighten that area up. I'm going to allow the moon to fully dry before moving on to the next step. I am going to take some Sweetheart on my brush, which is a neon magenta, and I'm going to fully saturate my brush with paint and start working on the left side of the moon. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the right. So I'm going to fully saturate the left curve of the moon with paint. I am going to wet my brush and dab my brush on a paper towel. I am not picking up any more paint because I want the full saturation to be on the left hand side. And now I am dragging the paint with horizontal strokes across the middle of the moon. Again, we're not picking up any extra paint. We are just cleaning off our brush and drying it on a paper towel. Now I'm going to go back in to the right side of the moon and I'm going to add some more white. Once you have the right side of the moon fully covered, you're going to do exactly what we did with the pink. So we're going to drag that white into the pink. Now we are going to once again do the same thing with the pink. Pick some pink up on your brush and drag it over to the white part. So we are going to continue doing this until you get a nice blend between the white and the pink. One of the things that I really love about this piece is that you are able to see the strokes of color. So try not to completely blend both sides in the middle. You want to make sure to leave some areas where you'll see the strokes of white as well as the strokes of pink. And as you'll see here, some of the pink eventually does make its way into the white, and that's okay. It gives it a bit of a more natural feel, so it's not so stark against the pink side of the moon. So continue doing this until you are satisfied with the way that your moon looks. Now you don't need to allow the moon to fully dry before moving on to the next part, but it's best to do that to avoid any accidents. So with plain water, I am drawing a horizontal line against the bottom of the paper. And we are going to fully saturate the paper with water right under that line. As you can see, I didn't use a ruler to make the line straight. I hardly ever do with these pieces. So you can, if you'd like, you can draw the line and just add water below it, or you can eyeball it the way that I did. Once you are satisfied with the placement and the bottom of your paper is fully saturated, we are going to once again go in with the neon magenta or pink, and we are going to put in some horizontal strokes of color, and this is going to mimic the water. Now we are going to put the horizontal strokes of color all along the bottom. Make sure that you leave some areas that are black, the black of the paper, and make sure that you add some areas that are fully saturated with pink. You want to get as much saturation as you can along the left side of the paper because we will be adding in some strokes of white on the right side of the paper. Now I am going in with a smaller brush, so a size 2 brush, and I'm going to lift up some of the paint from the paper. So I'm going to wet and then dry my brush off a little on a paper towel and lift up some of that pink just because I added a bit too much pink on that side. If you didn't add a lot of pink on this side, then this is not necessary. Or if you'd like your piece to have a bit more pink, then feel free to leave it as is. I want some of the black of the paper to show through, so I'm lifting up some of the pink. Now with that same size 2 brush, I am going to grab a little bit of the Sweetheart and add some smaller, brighter strokes of pink along the very tops of the strokes that are already there. And this is just going to add a little bit of dimension. When you get closer to the horizon line, feel free to just add them in at random. Although if you add them into the tops of your strokes that are already there, it gives it a little bit of a wavy feel. Now I am going to grab my Copic Opaque White and I'm going to continue using the size 2 brush. And I'm going to add in a couple of very thin lines of white along the tops of the strokes of pink over on the left hand side, or sorry, over on the right hand side of the moon. So I'm going to do that, and I am going to blend the bottom edges out so that you don't have these harsh white lines. However, some of these lines are going to be covered later on. This is going to be sort of the underpainting of the water. Now I'm going to grab a pencil and quickly sketch out a little mountain area over on the right hand side of the paper. And remember, in order to have a more realistic look to the mountain, you don't want to have any straight lines. So make them a little curvy, make them a little jagged, and it will give your mountains a more realistic feel to them. Still using that size 2 brush, I'm going to grab some white and start painting in the mountains. So I'm going to link a video above that shows you how I typically paint mountains, so I won't have to repeat that in this video. However, we're adding some white and we're adding in some pink areas. So the pink areas are going to denote the areas of shadow on the mountain. And the white areas are going to denote the areas of light. As I get closer to the bottom of the mountain, I am going to begin to blend in the white into the water. So doing this is going to give the water a feel of having mist over it. And we are going to bring that mist further down into the water on the right hand side. So we're taking it section by section. Instead of completely wetting the entire bottom piece, we are working it a little at a time. So add a little bit of white and then add a little bit of water to your brush and blend that down. And continue doing this until we reach further down into the piece. You can stop here if you'd like. You can have the mist just stop right under the mountains, or you can continue to take that mist further down into the water. At this point, I am going to switch to a bigger brush, so a size 8 brush, and I am going to wet the entire bottom piece, so all of the water, just so that we don't have any hard water lines. And doing this will also blend in some of the white lines that you added earlier and push them back into the background. Once you have completely wet the bottom, try not to overwork it as much, because you also don't want your pink strokes to blend completely together. So now I'm going to go in and add a little bit of white. I'm going to continue adding just a tad bit of white. You don't want too much. You don't want it completely white along the bottom edge of the right hand side of the water. And in between, I am going to clean off my brush and dry it a bit. We don't want to introduce too much water into the piece, and continue blending that down. Allow your piece to fully dry before moving on to the next step. So now with my white Uniball Signal gel pen, I am going to draw some, or stipple in, dot in, some swirly patterns. So in order to do this, the first thing that I want to do is initially stipple in the pattern. And then after that pattern has been laid down, we are going to go in and fill in some of the stars or the dots around it. You don't want to make this too linear, so you don't want the dots to be in like in a row. You want them to be as scattered as possible. So just continue adding dots all around, but make sure that you continue to follow that pattern that you initially laid down. I'm going to do this technique several times across the paper, just to give a few swirls of stars across the sky. Once you are satisfied with the amount of swirls you have, then we are going to just dot in a couple of stars along the background, so the areas that are untouched, just to kind of bring it all together. Once you are satisfied with the amount of stars in the background, and as you can see, I didn't add many of them, I'm going to add in a few bigger stars within the swirls. So really just tiny little crosses. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular, but just a couple of little crosses inside of the pattern just to make them pop a bit. As you can see here, I'm just filling in a couple of places where it was a little sparse. And then to finish off the piece, we are going to add a bit of sparkles to the water. So with that same white gel pen, I am going to add a couple of those same tiny white stars to the bottom, and I'm concentrating it mostly on the right side of the paper. And after that, I'm just going to add a couple of tiny little dots to the water. And you can scatter these all around your paper, but have the majority concentrated on the right side of your paper.
Thank you for watching. Bye.
Thank you so much for
I love
watching.
you.
Oh, you're sweet.